Boom, we are alive, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us today. It's been a while since I've done a vlog, and going to Mexico City, going to visit a good old friend, and I hear great things about Mexico City, so I thought this might be a good time to reflect and talk about what I think might be happening in the macro story. This has been a really hard conclusion to come to, so I'm going to try to explain it as best as I can. So the last 2 years we've been focused mostly on venture capital, and that's done really well for us, but the last 2 years has been full of a bunch of things I've decided to keep my mouth mostly shut on. But as we have gotten further into the future, it's getting easier and easier to talk about. One of the things about venture capital is that you have to be bright early. And I've found it astonishing over the last 2 years that basically, depending on how well you can read other languages, the scientific and medical journals are totally different. For instance, if you happen to speak Dutch, French, or Spanish, masks don't work. But if you read the crap, horrible studies coming out, these horrible things apparently work. That to me is astounding. You know, we make a lot of money off being right early on investments, and the scientific literature is broken and corrupt. So the last 2 years has been interesting. We've focused in mostly on venture capital, but if you've been around on this channel and you've been following the Arcane Bear for a bunch of years, you'll know that a lot of our early podcasts were with PhDs in physics, biology, people that were pushing the boundaries of the studies that they were doing. And one of the things that I've found very difficult about the last 2 years is that my interest in science has been pushed to the limits. Now, for those of you that don't know or don't spend any time reading scientific journals or papers, there's a lot that goes totally over the heads of Western scientific journals. Now, what's interesting is I started to run into more and more people who could speak different languages as I got older, and what I started to find out from them is that their, I guess, what do you call it, medical journals read differently than the Western ones. I'll give you a prime example. Vitamin D has been extensively studied in other countries, yet in the Western world, for some reason, they can't seem to think that, you know, that might actually be a good idea just for general health. What's gone wrong in the Western world is that science doesn't look for truth anymore. It looks for the most profitable answer. So you're probably wondering, well, Tio, you know, we talk about crypto all the time. What the hell does scientific medical journals have to do with crypto? And they're not really connected at first. In fact, this will probably take more than one episode to go over. So I have around 2 more planned in this little sequence here. But I want to read to you from a medical journal called the BMJ, or the British Medical Journal. It is actually the oldest medical journal on this planet. I think it started in 1840. It was the first medical journal to run randomized controlled trials. And you're thinking to yourself, well, that's a valuable thing, right? How do we find out what value our scientific method has? And it's through this kind of rigorous sets of tests. You could do observational trials, you could do meta-analysis. There's a bit of a rabbit hole you could fall down for your entire life. People have spent their entire life studying the medical literature. But I found this article really poignant, and it brings me to the next video after this, but let's just dive here. So this is from the British Medical Journal, and it's called Evidence-Based Medicine Has Been Corrupted by Corporate Interest, Failed Regulation, Commercialization of Academia, And that's a big problem. So I'm just going to read through some of this, and I want to share the importance of finding truth over profit for a society. So let's start here. Again, this is quoted, the next part is quoted specifically from the journal. So this is a peer-reviewed piece of literature. This has been reviewed by the editors of the British Medical Journal and their peers. So, the advent of evidence-based medicine was a paradigm shift intended to provide science a solid foundation for medicine. The validity of this new paradigm, however, depends on reliable data from clinical trials, most of which are conducted by the pharmaceutical industry and reported by the names of their senior academics. The release into the public domain of previously confidential pharmaceutical industry documents has given the medical community valuable insight to the degree to which the industry-sponsored clinical trials are misrepresented. Until this problem is corrected, evidence-based medicine will remain an illusion. Now, the problem here is that this is stating, in few or more or less, we have a very, very big problem. And it is a corruption that most people would find hard to fathom. Now, you can go through any number of topic researches here, but many of these pharmaceutical companies have been fined billions of dollars for creating fraudulent scientific documents. Now, the problem is they will argue on the mainstream media through press release that they'll send out these ideas, hey, look, everything's actually safe and effective, when if you look at the clinical trial data, that's not at all what it says. And this is horrible for society, because it means that the average person, I'm sure most of you have actually probably never read a scientific journal before in your life, so this might be a new topic of experience for you. And the problem here is that it's very easy to lie to the average individual about what that scientific data says, because you might need to have like some depth and understanding of statistics or mathematics. And most people don't. Most people, again, because most people have never read a journal, they would really have no understanding of what this was. So you end up with companies being fined billions of dollars because their fraudulent scientific data ended up in the death of tens of thousands of people. So you're probably wondering, well, Tia, what does this have to do with crypto? What does this have to do with investing? And the next part's the next video after this one, because I'm going to have to break this up to make it sensible in some shape or form. I'm positing a thesis right now. The thesis says that when you start to deal with such a high level of corporate corruption, we need to ask ourselves, how far does that corruption go? And for the last bunch of years, if you've been watching the channel, the Federal Reserve to me has appeared stupid, not malice. And the data that I'm reading from the British Medical Journal started to make me think, maybe we're not dealing with stupidity. Maybe we're dealing with the proliferation of malice and corporate interests that go so deep, it's probably hard for the average person to fathom, myself included in that. So on this trip to Mexico, I decided what would be a good idea is to take a moment out to do a vlog, but to go into some of the other areas of abstract thought that I have been going through, and for the most part not able to talk about for the last 2 years, because any of this would have got you banned and censored. And one of the things that I love most is finding not the truth, but the potential for the truth. You know, this is a kind of, I think, the importance of the scientific conversation is not finding the truth per se, but it's finding something closer to the truth each time. And when that starts to fail, if society no longer is interested in the right answer, but only the profitable answer, we may be in for one of the most chaotic times in human history. So the next few videos are going to be the second one will be very pessimistic. We'll go over a lot of the data from the central banks of Japan, the ECB, the Federal Reserve. We're going to go over housing prices, interest rates. We'll go back more into the economic aspect of this conversation. And the third video will go over venture capital and how we plan to move forward. I'm very optimistic because over time, the human species has been extraordinarily adaptable and proven to be able to create some of the most ingenious pieces of technology, art, and culture that exists. You know, we're quite amazing for our imagination and creativity. So it starts off a little bleak here for these next two videos, but we end up in a very optimistic state. We've got some new ideas that we're going to hopefully be bringing to the table for venture capital for the rest of the Bear family as well, which I think you guys will all be excited about. But to get to that point, to get to the end result of the optimistic, we're going to have to go through a little bit of pessimism, and we might have to brave some storms here, because from what the British Medical Journal is saying, we're dealing with criminal interests that are only interested in profit. Well, anyways, the two with the Arcane Bear. Give us a thumbs up if you like this content. I'm sorry that this one's probably a little weird for most people, unless you've been on the Arcane Bear channel for a bunch of years and you know our interest in the scientific conversation. You know, it's great to want to make investments in the things that are right, but when you find out that the things that are right no longer make you money because the corporate interests have corrupted that conversation, it's a little disturbing. Anyways, give us a thumbs up if you like this content. Leave your thoughts, your comments, your questions down below. The British Medical Journal, I will link in the description, so that if you would like to continue to read that article, because it's pretty telling and it goes into much more detail about the specifics. Notice I didn't mention anybody's name, I didn't mention any product names. You got to be really careful now without getting off the damn internet nowadays. Anyways, thanks for following along. Steve with the Arcane Bear. I appreciate you all. This has been such a wonderful journey. I think we've got a bunch of amazing years ahead, but we might have to deal with a conversation that's not all that exciting. Anyways.